Automation. This discussion on automation is an important thing just to keep in mind what may happen in the future with future technologies out there. There's just so much happening over the years. I'm sure between when I'm recording this video and in the future, a lot of things will change and are gonna kind of have an impact on the market. So this is a simplified story, which might seem unrealistic to some extent, but there's a lot of interesting components coming out from it. So here the discussion goes of this universal replicator, which is a machine that can replicate any physical good. If a car is put into the universal replicator, the machine will create an exact working duplicate at the touch of a button. It will work on any non-living object. Assume this technology becomes widely adopted throughout the country by manufacturers of all types, so it's relatively cheap. So a bunch of questions you should look at and answer. I'm just going to discuss these very briefly here, but I want you guys to take a little bit more of a moment and think about it. So what impact would the universal replicator have on the economy? You could see this from the positive side of going like more goods. Like, this is awesome. We're going to be able to get access to a lot of these things that we typically were very expensive and very rare. We'll have access to them. But at the same time, we could think less jobs, which kind of jumps into the second question here. What jobs would not be needed? So which jobs would those be? Well, any kind of manufacturing job would not be needed as much. A few people within that firm where they replicate, but not nearly as much as building things from scratch. What would happen to the price of the goods? Well, any good that's more easily available, change in technology, typically a drop in the price of the goods, which can be seen as good. But what kind of problems would you expect? Well, a lot of these jobs would be lost. And unless some of these workers could find something else, it might be very hard for them. So things could become cheaper potentially, but it's that kind of thing that if these workers no longer have work, how are they going to pay for something cheap? So we really want to make sure that these workers are ready to adapt. So need to adapt. But think about it. Try to think about which job is safe and which job isn't. And try to think about, like, with all these technologies changing, how will you make yourself in a position that you'll always be able to sustain in the foreseeing future? Like, if accounting is super popular, but with artificial intelligence and other tools, accountants are not nearly as needed as before because machines could do it better and faster and more accurately. Well, that leads to potential problems. So you have to keep in mind, what can you do that a machine will not be able to do anytime soon? What benefits do you see? Well, more goods available, which can definitely be a good part. What kind of jobs would still be necessary is a discussion. And it leads me to sometimes think about the future, like what would we aspire to in the future if everything that we have, houses and other things like that, goods, are really easy to produce. Do we really want to find other jobs? Should the government ever step in and try to make sure that everyone gets kind of a base salary and other things of that nature? So it leads to some discussions. Otherwise, you might have the potential problem in the future that the people who will be very wealthy are the people who own all this technology of these machines, and the people who own the natural materials that are also needed, the land and the machines and the technology. And then in that scenario, you could have like an extreme change and rich level, like an extreme inequality, which is never good for a society. So it's something that the government should not take lightly in this discussion. So think about it, but always keep this in mind when you think about job prospects, investment prospects, and just that whole discussion. Should you buy this business that you think is a good business right now? How will it evolve over time? A lot of things change rapidly. Like if we just think about retailing with online and other markets of that nature, a lot of things have changed over time. So just something good to read through and to think about. And there's a little bit more discussion about this in the textbook.